I stood on the graduation stage, the crowd roaring, flashbulbs going off. Yet the only thing I saw was my mother, not clapping, not crying, just sitting there in the front row, wearing my sister's college jacket. It wasn't a mistake. It never was. That jacket had always meant more to her than I ever did. But here's what no one knew. Not my mother, not my sister, not even me until that very moment. I was about to win something none of them could ever claim. Not just the honor roll. I was about to take back the story they tried to write for me. I clutched my honor roll certificate with both hands, careful not to wrinkle the gold-embossed edges. Everyone around me was smiling, cheering, standing. But my eyes searched for only one face in the crowd. And when I found her, front row, aisle seat, arms crossed over her chest, I felt something cave in. My mother, wearing a college jacket, but not mine. The dark green and gold lettering was unmistakable. Princeton, my sister's alma mater. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. She had chosen that jacket deliberately, like a declaration that even on my day, someone else still came first. The applause faded in my ears. I smiled mechanically, posed for photos with professors, shook the Chancellor's hand, but inside I felt like I was watching someone else's moment. Not because I didn't deserve it, but because I'd never been allowed to believe I did. Back home, it had always been Claire. Claire the scholar, Claire the athlete, Claire who got the family dog named after her. I was the second daughter, the quieter one, the one whose spelling bee trophies collected dust in the attic, while Claire's debate medals were framed in the living room. Christmas gifts were always just slightly more thoughtful for Claire. On birthdays, hers came with speeches and cake tears, mine with polite nods. At dinner, Claire's stories prompted laughter and follow-up questions. Mine barely got a, "That's nice, honey." Still, I tried. I worked harder, got better grades, volunteered more, stayed up later. Hoping maybe, just maybe, my mother would see me. Really see me. But the woman sitting in the front row, wrapped in Claire's triumph like a second skin, didn't even glance up when I accepted my honor. I looked at her during that exact moment, just after the Chancellor called my name and handed me the plaque. I turned, certificate raised, heart pounding. She looked up, nodded, barely. And her expression didn't change. Her nod didn't say, "I'm proud." It said, "Let's just get through this." That night, I found myself digging through old boxes in the attic. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Proof? Evidence? An explanation? That's when I found the letters. A stack of them, tied with blue ribbon, in Claire's handwriting. But these weren't from Claire. They were to her, from our mother. Letters from when Claire was at university. Pages and pages of encouragement, stories, memories. One line stopped me cold. "You are and always will be the brightest star in my life, my only true pride." Only true pride. I read that line so many times, the words blurred together. Had she really meant it? Was it a fluke of emotion? Or was I never meant to be more than a shadow? I took one letter to my father. We'd never been close, but he was always the quiet kind, watching rather than judging. I asked him why. He stared at the letter for a long time before folding it gently. "Your mother. She lost someone before you. A son. Firstborn. Stillborn." I hadn't known. "Claire!" He nodded. "Claire came after. But your mother. She wasn't ready again. You came next. Too soon. Too raw. She didn't want to be pregnant. Not then." I felt the breath leave my chest. "So I was an accident." "No," he said, but it didn't sound like conviction. "You were..." A shock she never forgave herself for. The attic was cold, but I shivered from something else entirely. Was that it? Was I her regret? A walking reminder of grief? Was I always just the plan B that stuck around? If you've ever sat across from someone who was supposed to love you and realized they might only be pretending, you'll understand what came next. I left the letter on the kitchen counter. No note, no confrontation. Just the weight of it, sitting between the fruit bowl and the family calendar, like a quiet accusation. That night I lay awake and watched the ceiling shift in the moonlight. I thought about all the times I had earned her praise and only received silence. All the dinners I cleared without thanks. All the achievements I minimized because I knew she wouldn't care. But now I cared. I was tired of being the backup plan. By the end of sophomore year, I had already earned more academic honors than most of my classmates would in 4. Dean's List, departmental scholarships, even a state-level creative writing award. My name was engraved on plaques, printed in programs, whispered in hallways. But back home, it was just noise. I didn't bring certificates home anymore. They went into a drawer, next to the socks that never matched. I stopped telling my parents when I published something. I'd learned the hard way. Sharing only invited silence, and silence felt louder than anything else. Once, after receiving a campus-wide honor for community leadership, I emailed the family group chat with a short message. I was chosen for something today. No one replied, not even a thumbs-up emoji. The next day, Claire sent a photo of her new apartment. The group exploded with congratulations, fire emojis, and links to furniture ideas. I wasn't even angry. I just deleted the thread. That year I started documenting my wins in a private journal. Every scholarship, every contest, every paper praised by professors. I wrote it down for myself, like a secret museum of a life no one wanted to visit. During winter break, I flew home for Christmas. My mother asked how classes were going. I told her I was fine. She nodded, then turned to Claire and asked about her new marketing job. When we took family photos that night, I noticed later that I had been half cropped out of one shot. In another, I was in the background, blurry. The final photo she posted on Facebook was just her and Claire. The caption read, "Proud of my girl." So I stopped trying to be seen, and instead I tried to become undeniable. I pushed harder. I signed up for research internships. I joined editorial boards. I submitted poems to journals I'd never dared before. Every time I wanted to cry, I worked. Every time I wanted to scream, I wrote. Sometimes I'd sit in the corner of a campus cafe, nursing a single coffee for hours, watching other students with their parents, hugging, laughing, receiving flowers. I'd look away when it got too loud. I'd plug in my earbuds and play the saddest piano songs I knew. It didn't make me feel better. It made me feel real. One gray Tuesday afternoon, in the middle of a rainstorm that felt biblical, I opened a blank Word document and titled it, "I Exist Too." I didn't plan the essay. I didn't edit it. I didn't even save a draft. I just wrote. It spilled out. Everything. Being the second child. The silence. The jacket at graduation. The feeling of being a ghost haunting my own family photo albums. I ended the piece with one sentence. All I ever wanted was to be clapped for by the hands that first held me. I sent it to a campus literary contest on a whim, not expecting anything. I didn't even check the submission box again. A month later, I got an email from Professor Langston, head of the English department. He had read the piece. Not only did it win the contest, but he had shared it with his colleagues. One of them posted it online, with my permission, but under a pseudonym. I chose the name Grace. Within 48 hours, it had been shared over 100,000 times. The piece hit something deep. People flooded the comments. I'm the invisible daughter, too. This broke me. She said what I never could. On TikTok, strangers made reaction videos, crying, talking, remembering. I stayed silent. I didn't like or comment. I just watched. Then came the message. It was a private DM sent to the email listed under the pseudonym. Subject line, I knew your mother. The sender claimed to have been close to her in college. Best friends once. Her message was short, oddly formal, almost hesitant. I believe you're her daughter. I saw the jacket in your story. I used to have one just like it. Your mother and I, we drifted after something happened. Something big. I think you deserve to know. I froze. My cursor hovered over the reply button, then backed away. My breath came fast, shallow. Could it be real? A piece of the puzzle no one had offered before? Was there more to this than just favoritism? Had something deeper fractured my mother long before I was born? And then the question came. Not from her, not from the crowd online, but from inside me. What if she hadn't meant to hurt me? What if her silence was just the echo of something broken? I didn't know whether to hope or run. The woman's second message arrived 3 days later, this time with details. Names, dates, a scanned photograph of her and my mother from the early 90s, arms linked, smiles bright and careless. In the message, she wrote, Your mother once planned to leave your father. She was going to move out, start fresh, with only one child, Claire. I read it twice, 3 times, and then again in the dark, with just my phone screen lighting the ceiling above me. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't scream betrayal. It whispered it, like a secret I'd known all along, but hadn't had the words to say out loud. I was the one she almost left behind. The thought gutted me. It didn't matter that she stayed. She stayed physically, but not emotionally. Her decision to remain didn't feel like a choice for me. It felt like an obligation, like a punishment. The silence, the dismissals, the jacket, all of it made sense now. I wasn't just unwanted. I had been nearly erased before I ever had the chance to exist. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I opened my laptop. I wrote for hours. Words poured out like wounds, bleeding ink. Unfiltered, wild, furious. I didn't write to be read. I wrote to survive. Every line was a blade. Every paragraph, a pulse. When I finally stopped, my fingers trembled, and I realized I hadn't cried. Not once. It was as if I had finally spoken, after years of being mute. The next morning, I searched online for something I didn't know I needed. Support. I found a private group called The Overlooked Ones, a quiet corner of the internet filled with sons and daughters just like me. Forgotten, unchosen, silenced. I joined anonymously, read threads for days before posting. When I finally did, I shared my story, shortened, disguised. I didn't need recognition. I needed someone to say, me too. And they did. Hundreds of them. One message hit me like a hand on the shoulder. You're not crazy. You were just erased too early. That night, I didn't feel healed, but I did feel seen, and that was enough. A week later, I attended my first local meetup. It was awkward. Everyone kept their voices low, their eyes soft, like we were all holding something fragile between us. But when it ended, and people stood to leave, a woman around my age walked up and hugged me, tight, no words. She whispered, "You were never invisible to me." It shattered something in the best way. The next week, an email arrived from the university. A student conference was being held. Theme: belonging and becoming. A professor had submitted my original essay, and they wanted me to speak. I almost declined. Public speaking terrified me. And more than that, Telling the story in front of others felt too exposed, too raw. But something in me said yes. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was that one hug that still lingered like warmth on my back. When I stood behind the microphone, my palms were damp, knees slightly trembling. The room was full of strangers, some scribbling in notebooks, others sipping coffee. I opened with the words I had never said aloud. I'm the daughter who wasn't chosen. A hush fell. No coughing, no fidgeting, just stillness. I told them about growing up in a house full of love that somehow missed me, about a jacket at graduation, about silence sharper than knives. I told them I had worked my entire life to be seen by someone who looked through me. When I finished, I didn't expect applause, but I heard it. Quiet at first, then louder. One woman in the front row wiped her eyes. A man stood and clapped with both hands like he was making up for lost time. Later that evening, I received a message, handwritten, scanned into a PDF. It was from Claire. She had seen the talk. A friend had sent it to her. She began with one sentence. I always knew. My throat closed. She wrote that she had seen the way Mom looked past me. She'd watched the way I shrank at holidays. She said she wanted to speak up, but every time she thought about it, she panicked. I thought if I defended you, Mom would stop loving me too. I didn't know what hurt more, that she knew, or that she chose silence. The letter ended with, I'm sorry. I wish I had been braver. And I didn't know if that made it better or worse. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. The kind where clinking silverware feels like thunder. We sat around the same oak table we'd used since I was 6. But nothing felt familiar anymore. My mother passed the breadbasket to Claire without looking at me. My father asked how work was going, for Claire. No one mentioned the speech. I waited until the plates were cleared. I have something to say, I began, voice steady but low. Claire's fork froze midair. My mother finally looked up, eyes narrowing. I know you saw the video, I said, and I know you didn't like what I said, but I meant every word. My mother leaned back in her chair, arms folded. So you think making a public spectacle of your family is something to be proud of? It wasn't about spectacle, I replied. It was about truth. She laughed, cold, sharp. Truth? You mean your little fantasy where you're some martyr for not getting enough attention? I flinched but didn't back down. No, I mean the truth where I was ignored. The truth where my successes were invisible. The truth where you wore Claire's college jacket to my graduation. My father shifted uncomfortably, but still said nothing. Claire's eyes welled up. Mom, she whispered, but our mother shot her a glare that silenced her. You ungrateful child, my mother spat. Do you know how hard I worked for you? For this family? And this is how you repay me, with public shame? I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is for you, I said, placing it gently on the table between us. It's part of the essay, the part I never shared online, the part about you. She stared at it like it was poison. Then slowly, without breaking eye contact, she reached out, picked it up, and tore it in half, then into quarters, then again. Tiny pieces of my heart scattered on the tablecloth. I don't need your pity prose, she said. I don't need to be dissected by a daughter who thinks pain makes her special. Claire covered her mouth with both hands, tears slipping down her cheeks. My father stood up, walked to the sink, and stayed there, staring out the window. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply stood, gathered my bag, and left the room. Outside, the air was sharp. I walked without knowing where I was going. My feet moved faster than my thoughts, and I didn't stop until I reached the bus station downtown. I sat on the bench, pulled out my phone, and opened the video. The one from the student conference, me, behind the mic, my voice shaking, then growing stronger. I'm the daughter who wasn't chosen. It had been posted to the university's official page. I never expected more than a few hundred views. Now it had over 1 million. Comments poured in. She said everything I was too afraid to admit. This healed something I didn't know needed healing. My own mom wore my sister's hoodie to my wedding. I cried watching this. The world saw me. Strangers understood me more than my own family. A few days later, the university emailed again. Journalists were reaching out. Podcasts, blogs. One popular site dubbed me the Invisible Graduate in a headline that trended for hours. And then, an email from a publisher, a small imprint, but reputable. The editor wrote, "Your voice matters. Would you consider expanding your essay into a book?" I stared at the screen, hands trembling. Was this happening? Was I worth reading? I didn't answer right away. I needed time. I needed stillness. That night, I went back to my apartment. The lights were off. I didn't turn them on. I sat on my bed, opened the video again, and watched it all the way through. For the first time, I didn't cry for my mother. I cried for me, for the little girl who waited at every school play, scanning the audience for a face that never came, for the teenager who practiced her speech in front of a mirror, hoping someone might ask what it was for the woman who, for years, believed being ignored meant being unworthy. I cried until my chest ached, and then I slept, not to escape, but to begin again. The blank page blinked at me like a dare. I sat at my desk, fingers poised over the keyboard, and felt a fear I hadn't known since childhood, the kind that comes when you know you're about to say something that might change everything. I didn't have a title yet. I didn't have a structure. But I had a pulse, and it was thudding against my ribs like a drum demanding to be heard. I started with the jacket. Chapter 1. The day my mother wore someone else's pride. Then the memories began spilling out. Not just the obvious ones, the graduation, the holidays, but the smaller, meaner ghosts. Like the time I got lost at the mall and when the security guard found me. I told him my name was Claire, because I thought maybe that would make someone come faster. Or the time I stayed home sick and listened from my room as my mother told a friend, "It's easier with one kid who gets it." Each chapter was a wound reopened, a scar re-examined. But with every sentence, something uncurled inside me. I wasn't writing for revenge. I was writing for release. The book wasn't neat. It wasn't polished. But it was honest. Every line vibrated with the ache of a child who had waited too long to be chosen. I titled it, The Unseen Daughter. When I emailed the draft to the publisher, my hands shook so badly. I hit send and immediately shut my laptop. I didn't check my inbox for 2 days. I walked through campus like I was made of glass, brittle and afraid to shatter. I second-guessed every page, every paragraph. What if it was too raw, too specific, too much? But when the editor finally replied, her message was short and life-changing. "This isn't just a book," she wrote. "It's a rescue." I read her response 10 times. Then I cried. Because for the first time, someone didn't just understand the pain. They named it, validated it, honored it. As the publication process began, I joined a small online forum the publisher ran, a space for early readers to preview the manuscript. Feedback poured in within days. One comment stopped me cold. I read this, then went straight to my child's room and hugged them like I was making up for every second I hadn't. Another said, "This isn't a memoir, it's a mirror." More than one person messaged me privately. I thought I was the only one. You gave me language for something I never dared to say. I forgave myself after reading this. Every message added weight to the story. Not a burden, but a kind of gravity. The book wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to all of us who had waited at the edges of love. When the book launched, it sold slowly at first, a few thousand copies. Then a parenting influencer posted a heartfelt review, sobbing through a video, holding up the book like a lifeline. It went viral overnight. Suddenly, interviews rolled in, speaking requests, panel invitations. I found myself on stages, behind microphones, in bookshops where people lined up just to say, "Thank you." A woman in her 60s once pressed my hand between both of hers and whispered, "I've waited decades for someone to say what you did." I didn't feel famous. I felt found. Somewhere between the airports and events, I opened my inbox one morning and saw a subject line I hadn't expected. From Claire. Subject, "Mom wants to talk to you." My heart kicked. I sat motionless, staring at the words. The message was brief, careful. "She's been reading the articles, watching the interviews. She says she's ready. She wants to meet." There was no apology, no explanation, just a request. I didn't reply right away. I needed space, silence. That night I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. The lighting was too harsh. I leaned in close, studied my own eyes. There were bags beneath them. Exhaustion, yes, but something else too. Something softer. I touched the glass, palm flat. "You're enough," I whispered. "You always were. Even if no one clapped, even if no one stayed. You were enough." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. The invitation came in a navy blue envelope, thick paper, and gold trim. At first, I thought it was another speaking request, one of many that had filled my inbox lately. But when I opened it and saw the university crest, I stilled. They were inviting me back, as an honorary speaker, alumni spotlight. It wasn't just for my writing. It was recognition of resilience, of transformation, of turning silence into speech. I sat with the invitation for days before I replied. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to feel everything it meant. The last time I stood on that campus stage, I was clutching a certificate, trying not to notice the jacket my mother wore. This time, the stage was mine. The ceremony was scheduled for spring. Cherry blossoms would bloom along the university quad, just like they had the year I graduated. I bought a simple navy dress, no ruffles, no statement earrings, just me, clean and clear. I didn't tell anyone I'd accepted, but word got around. A week before the event, Claire texted, "We're coming. Mom too." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Okay." The morning of the event, I arrived early. The auditorium looked smaller than I remembered. The seats weren't filled yet, but I stood on the stage, rehearsing under my breath. The podium still bore the university seal. I traced it with my fingertip. Then the crowd came in. Students, professors, alumni, reporters. And in the third row, I saw them. Claire, her hands folded in her lap, and beside her, my mother, wearing a soft cream blouse and a navy jacket, not Princeton green, not Claire's name stitched on the sleeve. This jacket had my university's emblem, and below it, embroidered in neat white thread, my name, Allison Reese. I blinked hard, swallowed the lump in my throat. When my name was announced, the applause felt different, not polite, not obligatory. It thundered. I walked to the podium and let the quiet settle. "When I was younger," I began, "I thought being invisible was something you learned to live with. That if no one clapped, maybe you didn't deserve the sound. The audience leaned in. But I've learned that silence isn't the absence of value. It's the absence of recognition. And we, all of us, deserve to be recognized. I talked about the essay, the book, the strangers who became mirrors, the pain that became purpose. And at the end, I paused. For most of my life, I stood in crowds looking for someone to see me. I waited for someone else to validate my presence. But today, this time, I looked directly at my mother. I saw myself too. The auditorium was still. Then slowly, hands met hands. Applause built like a wave. I stepped back from the mic, heart full. Not with revenge, but with release. After the ceremony, people lined up to speak with me. Some offered hugs, some cried. I kept glancing toward the third row, but my mother stayed seated. Claire came up briefly, whispered, "That was beautiful," and gave me a small, trembling smile. I nodded. "Thank you for coming." My mother never approached, and I didn't chase. That night, I left town with one stop in mind. The cemetery was quiet. Morning dew still clung to the grass. I walked slowly, counting rows, until I found the headstone I had only ever seen in a photo. No flowers, just a name, a date, a life that barely began. I knelt, pulled a folded paper from my coat pocket, and placed it gently at the base of the stone. The letter was short. "I'm not you. I never was, and I don't resent you anymore. You were someone my mother loved deeply. I wish she had loved me differently, but I don't blame you. I'm not a replacement. I'm not an echo. I'm real. I'm whole. And I am enough." I stood, brushed dirt from my hands, and looked around. The sun had risen fully now, painting the trees in gold. Birds called across the sky. It was a new day. As I walked down the gravel path, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Hi, I just finished your book. I'm 17. My mom doesn't see me either. But your words, they gave me something. You're the reason I still believe family can change." I smiled, tucked the phone into my pocket, and kept walking. The light was warm on my face, and for the first time, I didn't feel behind. I didn't feel less than. I wasn't trying to be seen anymore. I was already home.